Hello everyone. We'll start in a few seconds. All right. Good morning everyone. Good to have you here. My name is Mohammed Al-Mala. I'm the Manager of Enterprise Applications and Architecture for Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. And we'll be talking today about a use case of using Hadoop in healthcare specifically. Just by a show of hands, how many currently works in healthcare? Very good. About 50%. How many have currently Hadoop in production, even if you're not in healthcare? And the last question, how many are in healthcare and have Hadoop in production? 1, 2, am I missing anybody? 1, 2, okay. So that's, I think, a good segue to what we're going to cover today. The session, or at least the plan that I have in mind, we'll talk about the objective of the session. So hopefully by the end of the session, we'll do a checkpoint and see if these objectives were met. And then a little bit of introduction about Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, a little bit about me, and then the match between big data, or Hadoop specifically, and healthcare. And then the environment that we currently have, which is actually considered to be a challenge as well. Not just because we're CHLA, because any healthcare environment, most likely I will be focusing on care providers, hospitals, will have the same challenge as well, at least of the similar size. And why now Hadoop or healthcare, both of them kind of make sense, not just because of the big data and what is happening in big data, but also what is happening in healthcare. So there's a lot of, even if you're not in healthcare, you had to know that healthcare is going through enormous changes, has been and is and will continue to be, at least for the next couple of years. And even if, the people that wants to take Obamacare away, for that to happen, there's even more changes. So either way, there will be changes. And the case study that I'll be focusing on is for research, is about research specifically, but I think hopefully you will find it appealing and can be expanding as we are planning to more than just research. So even if you are a hospital that doesn't have a research department, I think you will see in it something for you. And again, talking about the challenges in what we have seen and the challenges that we're expecting to see, and what are we doing about it? And then being here, I'm appreciative because we get to talk to the big data vendors. And in this case, hopefully somebody will be listening, and some of the challenges that we're facing will be met from the other side by solutions that can help us as healthcare to adopt big data, because there is a value in big data, no doubt. The challenges need to be addressed. And then the takeaway, and then we'll leave a few minutes at the end for questions. So these are the objectives, why healthcare is a perfect domain for Hadoop, or at least I think so, and many actually also think so by the people that I follow. Describe some of the many challenges, describe use case, go over some lesson learned and next steps, and what the vendors and big data community can do to help healthcare. Just to set also the expectation, just in case if you're expecting one of those, I will not do those. So that might be a good time because I can understand. I've been there before. You've been in a session and expecting it to be technical, and it's not, or expecting it not to be technical, and it is, and you end up being disappointed. Not saying that even though that I said that, you will not be disappointed at the end. There are no guarantees, but at least I'm trying. So it's not to dive into technical details. There's a room for that. but it's not this session. It will stop at the high-level architecture. I can answer some questions. Of course, I have a technical team that will be able to answer better than me. So if I can't answer, or at least answer it with confidence, I'll take it and come back to you with an answer. I'm not assuming that any of you should be healthcare experts. So there are a little bit of terminology that I'll try to explain briefly, but you don't have to be a healthcare, hopefully, to benefit from this session. It's another use case for Hadoop. And then I will not show you a production or talk about a production Hadoop with 40,000 nodes, so by no means. So, and of course, we'll not even talk about petabytes. We'll talk about few terabytes. That's it. The history of Children's Hospital, we've been around for 100 plus years. We get about 12,000 inpatient visits to our hospital. We have one main campus in downtown or nearby downtown Los Angeles. We have about 30 plus outpatient clinics, so we get about 300,000 outpatient visits. We're actually just rolling out as we speak our EMR, an EMR for the people that are not healthcare or electronic medical record. So I'll keep mentioning EMR. So if you're coming from ERP world, that's the equivalent of the financial system in an ERP. It doesn't mean that we don't have a financial system. We actually do have a financial system, which is separate from the EMR. But the EMR is where it keeps the data about the patients, basically. That's the repository of your patient data. Not the only repository. There will be other patient information outside of your EMR, but that's the main one. So we're rolling that out. We had it since 2004, I think. It's from Cerner. And we're rolling it out to the outpatient as we speak, outpatient clinics. So it was inpatient, now it's outpatient. And then we get about 65,000 emergency department or ER visits a year. A couple of those were actually my kids. So that's an integral part of most of the hospitals, especially children's hospitals, as most of you might be aware. And then we do about 16,000 surgeries a year. We've been always ranked for years now as part of the honor roll from US News and World Report. We've been, I think this year we are number 5, ranking in all the subspecialties. We have about 5,000 employees, 600 medical staff, 360 beds. We just, a year ago, we opened our new tower. It's in the same campus, but a new, fresh tower for about 300. So the extra is the overflow from the old tower. And then most of those are private beds, private rooms. 80 plus are intensive care. This is our URL. We're affiliated with the Keck School of USC. And the Sapan Research has about 100 researchers. And these are the website. This is the URL. Myself, I've been, currently I'm a manager, which means I was ex-technical at some point. I'm currently ex-technical. I was a developer, a DBA, an ERP implementation, agile project manager, and so on. Worked for Oracle and Qualcomm and a couple of other names out there. Been with the hospital for a couple of years now. Again, responsible for the enterprise architecture, at least from the application side, the data side, as well as managing teams that take care of our intranet and custom development. So Hadoop and healthcare. Healthcare as a domain is so different from all the other domains, right? Every domain is unique in something. So health IT for many years have been lagging. That's something that we all know, that the systems and the technology that are adopted by hospitals are still a few years back. You'll find mainframes, you'll find, and these are central components of any IT environment in many of the hospitals out there, small or big or large. Just because of the recent push of the meaningful use, that has been changing significantly in the last few years. We're not there yet. Compared to a technology company or other domains, but definitely it's lagging. It's not at the end, but not definitely of the top 2 or 3. One thing that usually differentiate the healthcare from other domains is the HIPAA. which is the privacy rules about the patient's information and so on. So again, we're not there yet. I was just actually in the emergency room with one of my kids yesterday. He fell off the bed, jumping, and he, cut his forelip. And we took him to the UC, San Francisco UCSF. And they asked for my social security number. I said, I thought we were beyond that. I thought we, because we have an ID on my PPO insurance card. Why are you asking for my social number? And then after, after he asked me for it, he kept talking to me about the importance of shredding the documents that he gave me with my MRN number. So it's like you just take a piece of information, which is social security number, that you shouldn't have taken. He asked for it, and the system needs it, and he needs it. And at the same time, going around says, okay, now we need to protect what you have given me, which I shouldn't have given you from the beginning. So anyway, so we're not there yet, but we're definitely improving. And every now and then, I'm sure you read the news about the data breaches. Somebody lost his or her laptop in a car, and tons of patient data, and the laptop that wasn't encrypted, and somebody get a hold of it. And we don't understand really what they do with them. Sometimes they result in fraud, sometimes they're not, but that stuff keeps happening almost every month. And there is a good websites out there that tracks these incidents, by the way. Public health information, protected health information are the pieces of information that, tell who you are, what is your medical history, any demographics information, address, contact, and all of that. This is all social security number, driving ID, driver license ID, all of that. So these are pieces, again, very specific to the healthcare. Not every domain out there will ask you for all that information, and most of the time the patients or their families are vulnerable enough that when they are asked for this, that will not be the best time for them to argue back, like what happened to me. It's like, my kid, and I don't want to argue with you about HIPAA rules on the spot. I just wanted, him to be seen. So unfortunately, that's usually an entry for, again, a little bit of getting more data than we need to. Public cloud, we're not there yet. Not too many hospitals out there are relying on AWS, Amazon, or other like Azure or what have you. Definitely hosted, but not public. In many technology areas, there are few niche players. So I don't want to name names, but for example, there are very specific tasks in the hospital. For example, taking a call to refer a certain patient. That system that takes the call and maneuver the patient through the hospital, they call that actually, it's almost like a whole domain, subdomain called patient flow. What to do to efficiently move the patient from this phone call, or when he or she drops on an ED, or gets into the doors, how you efficiently move him into a bed or to see a doctor or whatever you need to take care of him. Keeping, of course, the safety and the quality of care as your first priority, but at the same time, you want to be efficient in utilizing your beds, your floors, your physicians, your nurses. So that's a whole optimization, almost science that, very, very specific. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, 20, 30 years ago, healthcare or healthcare IT was not a priority to many organizations, technology organizations like Amazon, Oracle, IBM. They paid a little, not much attention to it. So that left a gap to smaller companies to fill this need for a hospital. And that, of course, that's appreciative because, they benefited and the hospital got a solution. But at the same time, the domain didn't create this competition that usually are healthy. So a lot of those are really dominated by very few players, and most of them are small, and you end up with technology in many cases that are not open. So, and I've heard it so many times that it almost, became a cliche, our database model, for example, is a closed one. I can't share the database model that has our data with you. So they provide you with a system and they closed it. They don't want you to get the data direct from your database. They don't provide an API for you to get the data. And sometimes they will charge you even to FTP your data into a file. It's just amazing. And I don't know, again, how many of you working in healthcare have seen this, but this is a very common story. The openness of the architecture, the openness of the data is not there. And this is something that it's actually became almost like 50% of my job, is to try to make a choice that is a little bit more open. And sometimes you're between a rock and a hard place because none of them are open. But one of them will be willing to talk to you a little bit about giving you your data. So here we are talking about Hadoop, and to be able to, to implement Hadoop, what do you need? You need data. But if you can't get all of your data, you're shot from, before even you start. So you get some data. I mean, thankfully now, especially the big players, like we'll talk in a second, are into this now. They opened their platform, and they want it to be able to. They were smarter. Actually, the ones that opened it are likely to stay in the business, leading. The ones that kept closed, thinking that this is how they protect their IP, most of them, not all of them, but most of them are not doing well. Some organization in healthcare are powered by research and academia. That helps. That definitely helps. So having a research in our backyard with all these scientists, that helps. So when I talk Hadoop, they are not freaking out. They actually, sometimes they are far ahead of me, right? And the academia also helps, that research mentality. But of course, when it comes to money, that's a different story. But people are willing to talk, but budgets and so on still play a role. Healthcare is not so different. So it's different from one point of view. It's not so different from other domains. So that we have data, and the data is growing, point, like it or not. Health IT is trying to save money. So, we're trying, like everybody else, to be more efficient. But there is money available, right? So that's a good thing. Because, again, all this change, this potential, people are still want to invest in IT. You cannot find a hospital, at least a smart one, that said, you know what, we're not spending on IT any dime more, or we're shrinking our IT. They want to be efficient, they want to be smarter, but they do it very carefully, because they know that IT is very important for their operation. They won't be able actually to save money overall if they don't have a good IT system or solutions. But the way that we're going about it is what needs to be revisited. How do we spend the money, and when do we decide not to spend the money? This always needs improvement. The electronic medical record, and the EDW stands for Enterprise Data Warehouse, since it's the closest thing to Hadoop that healthcare knew about. So the closest thing to Hadoop a few years back was the Enterprise Data Warehouse. That was the dream of any big hospital, is to create an Enterprise Data Warehouse where they can run dashboards and reports, because you have, like the Joint Commission visits, and again, the people in healthcare or quality specifically in the healthcare hospitals will know that there's, needs, requirements that you need to fill. And these are usually about questions. You have questions, you have site visits, people coming, checking you out, but all they do, or most of what they do, is they watch, of course, and then they ask questions, and the questions need answers. So in many situations, because this is what the EDW and hopefully Hadoop will play a role, you'll ask a question. For example, simple one, how many patient, we call it touches, you can think of it as encounter or a visit. But one visit of a patient can include multiple touches. So you can be seen by a physician more than one time in the same visit. He, ask you something, do something, and they'll do a lab report, and based on that lab results, he come and ask you more questions. Considered to be multiple touches, even though it's the same encounter. But how many touches physician X had in a year? Simple question, right? You would think. Very tough question. Very, very tough question. And 4 or 5 departments, and because you will have different departments, right? The billing departments are supposedly, have that information, but not one-to-one because they don't bill by touch. They bill by operation, by, and so on, or surgery, or lab, or something, or equipment, or what have you. The DSS, which is usually part of the finance, will have another answer. And you'll have QI, the quality, will have another answer. And the medical group will have another answer. So you ask that question, and then you end up with 4 or 5 answers that are usually different. And the trick would be now to choose the most suitable one that represent the truth. So EDW was the solution for that. Let's get an EDW. Hopefully it will solve that solution. We'll have one answer. Many of the hospitals couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. EDW, the traditional way, is hard, very hard, very expensive. So they couldn't do it. Very few hospitals out there has it, and they can call it enterprise the way that they want, but it's not really enterprise because it have also only 20% of the data. That's not enterprise to me. They have a little bit in here, a little bit here, and they can call it enterprise if they want, but it's not. Care providers are dependent on hosted applications. So we host our EMR with Cerner, our PeopleSoft with IBM, Go Figure, and so on. So we do that all the time. So it's not like we're afraid of hosted application. Not acquainted with the public cloud yet, but we're okay with hosting, which is, you can call it private cloud. We're paying more attention to social networking, and social networking hopefully will lead to Hadoop, so that's happening as well. That doesn't mean that healthcare, is the only one that is seeing these potential challenges to implementing Hadoop. Actually, I was surprised that other candidates out there that are good candidates for Hadoop and big data, they actually have also these challenges. They are lagging behind as well. Like talk about government or public sector. Talk about entertainment and media companies. You would think they are dealing with, unstructured data. They are very much into the social networking. You would think, right? But you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. These giants out there, not necessarily on top of things. So we hear these, good use cases, including the one that I will tell you. But this is one out of a farm of millions of projects. So we need to put things into perspective. Yes, there are big data projects out there, but we only hear about few, and most likely these are the only few that are happening. And there are tons of other projects going around that are not related to big data. So we're not, healthcare is not the one only lagging and trying to struggle with implementing Hadoop. Here's the environment. I won't go into the details of each one, but the healthcare people in the audience will be interested to see it. So every solution has a reporting piece of it. That's part of the problem, right? Because it's reporting only out of these database that doesn't have everything. So you have Cerner as the EMR with all these modules, and it has its own, it's based on business objects. You have the registration McKesson, and McKesson has this whole plethora of modules, Horizon, Business Insights, and Performance Monitor, and even the OEM Spotfire from TIBCO. Some of you might have heard about it. ERP, of course, has their own reports from Oracle teletracking for bid management and central logic. Here's the integration engine. HL7 is another standard. Healthcare people will know about it. This is the standard that you send patient information and activities like admission, transfer of a patient. So when that event happens, and instead of building proprietary point-to-point integration, you send an HL7 message, and you send it through an engine. Content management, like most of you will have, we have SharePoint and so on. Blackbaud is the foundation. So most of the nonprofit organization will have a foundation because most of the time the reimbursement that we get from the insurance is not enough to keep the hospital running. So you go and get extra money. So we have enterprise technologies, Active Directory. We rely on Microsoft tools to do some of the small integration. .NET for ASP as well, and C# for the custom developed in-house, jQuery for the UI, XJS for the better UI, and I'll show you one sample of that. And again, a bunch of other stuff in the back end. This is what's changing. Yeah, ACA, Affordable Care Act, which is Obamacare basically, is happening. Meaningful use, stage 2 now. This is happening, changing the domain, disruptive. Now patient portals are popping up. I'm sure most of you have been asked by their doctor or the clinic that they go to register and check their portal or log into their portal, so they check their lab results, maybe schedule appointments. So it's not great yet. I haven't seen anything that I was taken away by it. Maybe the best would be Kaiser Permanente, I was saying, because of the size. But it's popping up, giving information to the patient. So that also is happening, because now it's not just us and holding the data and we control, and you go to the medical records and they print 100-page for you. No, this stuff is changing. And then the other thing that's changing is what's something called DRG. And the DRG basically in a nutshell is, instead of paying per night that the patient spent at the hospital, now you pay per classification. This is asthma, pneumonia, that category 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. This is X number of dollars. Medicare will only pay that. You keep him 5 nights, you keep him 3 nights. We don't care. So that's a big thing that's actually kicking in this month. A big thing, because previously it was almost like, if we kept him more, that's better for him and for us. Well, that's not the case anymore. So you need still to do the best thing for the patient, but you cannot keep him forever. You need to be efficient. So that's big change, which means more reliance on the data, because if you don't know how you're spending your money, how much you're getting, these are not by any means trivial questions. Very, very complicated questions. The way that they charge and the way they calculate it, very, very complicated. I mean, this is why we say it's a perfect example for Hadoop and the processing of it, especially if the data start increasing. Mobile, more access by the physicians, by the patients, more data, of course, because the more they access, the more generated logs and what did they do, and all of that, all of this is coming our way. EMR system is becoming more open, so API to go. This is how it used to be, the EMR. Most of them are client server. You run out of Citrix farm, you get a very clunky, old interface. Was really, not too many people loved it. They had to use it. But if you talk really to physicians and nurses and what have you, most of them, if they know that their bosses are not listening, most likely they'll tell you they hate it. They expanded the EMR architecture a little bit by offering web services. It says, okay, you want to build a better interface? Go do it. Have fun. So that actually changed things quite a bit. So we built a mobile app or couple, and we allowed integration from alert, like nurse call, for example, to go and get the schedule information from the EMR, send pages. So that opening of the architecture means yet more data. What is changing still? Cloud-based solutions. So now we have just recently a ventilator service company came and says, you want to get data about your ventilators in your ICUs and in your beds. Send us this data. It's not an on-site solution. Send us this data. We'll be able to run it through our analytics engine, and we'll give you a great dashboard with great insight on the use of these ventilators. They don't have on-site. So we have to send them our data with some PHI, protected health information, to somewhere with that data to be able to get the data. Of course, we ask, because it seems, first of all, if every device service provider wants a feed, we can end up having thousands of feeds. That's crazy. And most of them need direct feed to the device. So they need an available port on the device. And that's the use case that we're offering today. Instead of one point-to-point between the device to these servers or these providers, why don't we get it in a centralized place and you take it from the centralized place? Don't get it from my medical device. That's scary. Not only security-wise, but capacity-wise, it will not scale. No matter what you do, it will not scale, because you're limited by the number of ports on these devices. More integrations are needed for the bedside medical devices integrations, lab outreach, you name it. Tons of data are coming in, and this was not there before. Now again, a little bit slower than we need to, but it's happening. Increased demand for dashboard trends, Sparkline, everybody wants these now, right? Your physicians, your heads, department heads, and what have you. So this is a sample of something that we built in-house. The UI is coming from a .NET engine in the framework of Cerner. And you can do this now inside your chart, which is like graphics and what have you. That was undreamed of, a few years ago. This is within the platform. So what we're doing, we're expanding our in-house development team. So we decided to do this in-house with some help, of course, with consulting, but mainly in-house. We thought that this is the only way that we can retain knowledge, not only technical knowledge, but more importantly, business knowledge. I can find, maybe a little bit expensive, I can find Hadoop administrators and programmers, but I will not be able to find, at least easily, a Hadoop programmer that understands healthcare. That's tough. And on the top of that, understand CHLA, because we do business differently than anybody else. Everybody is the same way. So this is what we decided to do. We insist on open data access, open architecture, SUA as much as possible. And then we partner with big data vendors to do this. So let's talk about the use case. You have the EMR keeps a few on-demand snapshots through integration engine that they have. We do that now. We've been doing it for a couple of years now. So the nurse comes in and says, okay, I want to take a shot for the physician for the chart of the patient blood pressure. Click, take that shot at that specific moment. They take a couple of those. They don't have the time or the capacity to do more than that. Even if the doctor asks them to take more snapshots, they won't have the time. The life of a nurse is just crazy. It's amazingly crazy. Just getting an extra alert is something that you have to think deeply about. Just a message on their cell phone or wireless. So you have to think about that, and the only way that we can understand what is happening to the vital signs of the patient is to get that feed continuously, not just snapshots. So the researcher wants all of this data coming from this, and this is not everything. I mean, I had a couple of pictures, but they were not mine, so I couldn't put them in the slide, that shows a typical NICU room. It's just amazing. It's amazing. Just the ability to move within the room because of all these wires and hooks and pumps and ventilators, just crazy. So we collect the data in numeric and waveforms from these devices, at least the one that we've listed. We're collecting them into what we call a temporary storage, which is a SQL Server database. It's like the de facto standard that we have. Then data has some PHI data. They have to enter MRN number, sometimes the first name of the patient, what have you, into the medical device before they hook the patient to the device. Then the data is augmented with metadata, like when that happened, and maybe notes that the researcher or physician is entering, and so on. So that data, as is being collected, also is augmented, and that's the solution that we want, instead of connecting directly to the device. And this repository is in-house. That SQL Server is in-house. But we cannot keep the data forever. That stuff is crazy. We're talking about waveforms. We're talking about 300 plus beds. Each bed could have maybe 10 devices, and the frequencies that the researchers want are usually like every few seconds. So you can just do the math. It's, terabyte is something that we can generate. Again, not comparing ourselves to other big players, but you can generate terabytes every few days. So that's the solution that we have in place. Is the PI is the principal investigator. They use live XML stream search to be able to look at the data coming from these devices. And then we send them into a short-term SQL Server that has the UI that they can play back these vital signs and do some reporting. But more importantly, which is the important thing, is the solution did not retain or cannot retain data forever. The solution has to purge the data. So we say no. And the vital signs are still a lot of data, actually. People look at it from an archiving point of view and says, we can purge the data. We don't need it anymore. And every time I hear, I don't need this data anymore, it says, oh, this is only you. What about the rest? So to delete a piece of data, it's almost like somebody's cutting the line. To step in front of me, you don't take only my permission. You have to go through the whole line to take the permission from. That's the same thing. You cannot delete a piece of data just because you don't own the data. Nobody owns the data. If somebody comes to you and says, I own the data, no, you don't own the data. CHLA or the hospital owns the data. You're at the best a steward of the data. Don't touch the data. Don't delete the data. I want to give a few minutes for questions. So challenges, we have developers teams. They were mainly .NET. We had to teach them a lot about data. Considering Java, we haven't done Java yet. We've been doing the training. We've been relying on external resources for Java. Getting the buy-in from the business side. So Hadoop is not MySQL. You know, when we have MySQL, it's something that the IT does. It's something in the back end. But Hadoop is an ecosystem. You know, big data is a commodity. Is people now you can talk to them and says, this is what we want, this is what we need, this is what you can achieve. You don't have to hide these details from them anymore. Of course, you don't give them the whole, you know, Scoop, Hive, HBase, and you know, no, just enough for them to know what you're doing, to appreciate the value. Of course, the challenge that most of the vendors that I talked about are small. So you talk to them about Hadoop, and they are just like, "What is this guy? You know, he's crazy. You're just, you know, let's just be practical. Forget about that." And of course, this is changing because more and more are doing. So this was maybe 6 months ago. Now they listen a little bit more. And unfortunately, the small ones, the small big data vendors, I don't want to name names, but they are semi-successful, right? So they are busy. So you talk to them about, oh, let's do this, let's try this. They don't have resources because they are all over the place, you know, trying to catch the big waves. So that's a little bit of a challenge, but we're trying. And of course, the big ones, you go to the, you know, IBM or Oracle, they are expensive. You know, they don't want to, you know, do $50,000, you know, project with you. I mean, some of them will, don't misunderstand me, but, you know, it's not simple. Next step is we will, so far we haven't married this to the EMR. Why do you need the EMR? Because you want to correlate together. The blood pressure went up or down. Why? Where is the, you know, what did he take, the medication? When did we administer the medication? Where is this data coming from? From the EMR. The vital signs will not tell you. The devices will not tell you that. I mean, you can to a certain extent because the pumps, if you're hooking the pumps will tell you what medication, you know, has been given. But it won't give you everything because not everything is coming through the pump. You can give through a syringe directly, what have you. So this correlation is what will create from the vision is from the EMR, you can see the vital signs. From the vital signs, you can see the EMR, the Hadoop that calls the vital signs. So hopefully after we do this, we didn't go the other way around. We didn't start with the social networking, you know, and all of that. We just, you know, financial system administration. We tried to concentrate on the niche. This is where, you know, the clinical system, the EMR, this is what we care about. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. So if somebody has something, we'll take it. We're talking to other, you know, partners of ours and colleagues in the area like UCI. They are also actually ahead of us, UCI Medical Center. They've done analytics algorithms. If they can share, if it's open source, we'll take it. I don't take pride in reinventing the wheel. And then we're partnering with other, as I mentioned. Next steps is to expose the practical big data to end users. Big data is not IT thing, so I touched a little bit about that. What needs to happen, this is what we're hoping we can get, is the big data vendors need to understand the domain. You know, the only thing that most of them will do is talk about HIPAA. That's the only thing that they talk. It's like, okay, healthcare is more than HIPAA. And actually, if you ask them a little bit about HIPAA, they don't even understand HIPAA. So, you know, HIPAA, for example, you know, it means that, you know, if I ask you who have seen this patient data, you should be able to tell me who, when, and what did they see. And if they change something, what did they change it from to? So that's part of HIPAA. I mean, if you don't get that, so there are gaps that definitely Hadoop can jump in right away. There is the BI, the archiving, the data governance, enterprise search, social networking, and it has to be agile. We cannot do big bangs. We cannot do $2 million projects anymore. I mean, not from the get-go. We can do it maybe after a year or two, but HIPAA ready, any solution has to be that. Offer quick start packages. That usually works very well. Somebody comes to you with the training, consulting, licensing support, the package. Not high, not expensive, but it's a package and we'll do it agile. Instead of you trying to do each one of those by yourself. So these the objective that we started with. Hopefully they have been partially met. For more information, if you are in South California or were planning to be in South California in this time frame, I will highly recommend this MACMED conference, semi-conference symposium that we do. Research, our Saban department will do, and we'll talk about other projects that they have for their research, which also involves big data, not necessarily Hadoop, but big data objectives. One of them is the VPQ, and they have a site out there, which is also a fascinating story that we don't have time. I also an organizer, I didn't put it out there, I organize a meetup for the South California Health IT. So if you look for Health IT in South California, you should see it. So that's my main Twitter account, but definitely I couldn't do healthcare and big data tweets, so I had to create 2 additional tweets to be able to tweet about healthcare and about big data. One is for me and one is for you. Anyway, so that's it. I have 19 seconds for questions. I'll take one question and then I'll be here for any further question. Yes?
Yeah, you mentioned that EDW is not an option for most companies like yours, and that it's very hard. And the hard part is really the integration. You're talking about varying vital signs data to the EMRs and
Right.
so forth. So how do you do integration in a Hadoop environment? Do you like do joins in Hive or?
Right. So yeah, the question is briefly is how do you integrate? It's integrate in EDW. At least we used to have mapping ETLs. There is equivalent to that in Hadoop. It's still the logic is the same. You have a record that have an MR number, another record that have an MRN number. You can marry them. The logic will be based on MRN number. If they don't have an MRN number, and many of them they don't, then we have to go through a logic actually to match and to resolve conflicts when there are multiple, multiple of these matches. But the logic from high level, the way the technical is a little bit different, but the logic's still the same. So I'll have actually to wrap up, I think, or I have a minute. Yeah, I don't have it. So I'll be here for any further questions. Sorry, I was planning for more time, but ran out. Thank you very much.